Welcome to this new episode of Comics Bazaar, which is going to focus on the second issue of 1991's X-Men comic by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. So this particular issue is cover dated November and it cost $1. You can see on the title that there is a signature there, and that's by Chris Claremont. So I got that signed by the author a number of years ago when he was at a comics convention in London. So the cover here features the comic's antagonist, Magneto, and you can see that he has used his mutant power, his power over magnetism, to imprison Professor X there in a series of metal pipes and wires. And the X-Men blue team of Psylocke, Gambit, Wolverine, Rogue and Cyclops are also captive and indeed turned to stone in this particular symbolic cover. So let's open the issue up and take a look at the first page there. The splash page features this great headshot of Magneto wearing his helmet. The title of the story is Firestorm. It's the second part of a three-part story. And the creators are Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, as you can see. Scott Williams inker and Joe Rosas colorist. And finally, Tom Orzechowski, letterer, rounds out the creative team for the issue. So this picks up directly from the cliffhanger at the end of X-Men number 1. Magneto is facing off against the X-Men blue team on the island of Genosha in the Indian Ocean. And Genosha is a kind of fictional Marvel Universe version of apartheid South Africa, but the country was recently liberated and has jettisoned its former apartheid bias against mutants. And Magneto, in any case, is here talking about how the country deserves this punishment in terms of the damage that was wreaked by his acolytes and by he himself in the previous issue. The X-Men, of course, take a different view, and naturally enough, battle ensues. And Magneto does his best to argue his case, but the X-Men are not persuaded. In this particular encounter, this manipulator figure, Fabian Cortez, attacks Psylocke and uses his mutant power against her. And it wasn't explained in the first issue what his power was, but we get an explanation of it later on in the issue, where basically his power is to enhance and speed up any other mutant's powers. So Psylocke there is overloaded with a powered up version of her own telepathic abilities. Here we have a scene, double page spread here of the UN, and in the UN you've got Nick Fury present, the head of Marvel's spy agency S.H.I.E.L.D., Dr. Val Cooper, who is the US government's principal liaison officer in relation to mutant affairs. And we've got delegates from China, from the USSR, because in 1991 the USSR still existed, and other delegates, including American ones at the UN, and they're debating what's to be done about Magneto. And there is mention for the first time of the Magneto protocols, which we learn more about subsequently in this particular issue. So back then to Genosha, and Psylocke, in her discombobulated state, gets attacked by a mutant-hating mob. She's rescued by the Beast, and Fabian Cortez mocks him and tells him about, and by virtue of telling Beast about his powers, us, the readers, which I explained a minute or so ago. Magneto intervenes once again, and this time he's harsher, and he has captured, using his magnetic powers and wrapping metal and pipes and wires around them, Wolverine and Cyclops. Then the scene shifts back to the X Mansion, Professor X's mansion in upstate New York. And there the professor is wondering about the Magneto protocols, what they might be, and he asks Forge, who has a mutant ability that makes him expert in technology and technological and engineering type matters and skills. So Forge is going to look into that, and meanwhile Professor X is going out of the X Mansion in search of Moira MacTaggert, who at the end of the previous issue, there was a cliffhanger where she talked about how everything that was happening with Magneto was all her fault. So Professor X goes in search of her. Then we cut back to Genosha again, and Rogue is trying to reason with Magneto, but he's adamant in his course of action. He tries to persuade Rogue to join him. She's a little bit ambivalent about things. Psylocke, meanwhile, attacks Magneto, and one of the acolytes intervenes, this guy here, Chrome, and turns the X-Men Blue team, the ones that are not already out of action, into Chrome type statues, living statues though. So Magneto departs with the acolytes, with the captive X-Men, the Blue team, and makes his way to Asteroid M. So aboard Asteroid M, Magneto learns that something has interfered with his genetic code, his DNA, and he decides to look into that. The scene switches to the grounds of Professor X's property in upstate New York, in a boathouse where he finds Moira MacTaggert drinking alone, and she is upset and refers to her mutant son Proteus, how she tried to help him but it didn't work, and now she's afraid that she's done it again. And of course, who appears suddenly out of the blue but Magneto, and he rips the boathouse from its foundations and brings it up into the Earth's atmosphere. Okay. So in the boathouse, moving up into space, Magneto interrogates Moira in terms of what has happened to his DNA code and sequence. And then the story comes out that in the past, in X-Men continuity, Marvel continuity, Magneto was reduced to the state of an innocent child. We can see him depicted there in that particular panel. And then at a certain point, and when he was a child, he was given into the care of Moira MacTaggert. And Moira is a highly skilled geneticist who ran a mutant research centre on Moor Isle off the northern coast of Scotland. Later on in X-Men continuity, Uncanny X-Men 104, Magneto was restored to his adult state, but it turns out that Moira had done some work on his genetic code in order to ensure that he wouldn't grow up to be the Magneto who formerly founded the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. that he would in effect be a good man, and Magneto takes it very, very badly there. And he finds he finds it disgusting what she's done, and then he brings her to Asteroid M, and in front of the captured X-Men and the Acolytes, he digs further into what she did to him. She talks about how, if I could modify the genetic matrix, eliminate the instability, perhaps I thought I might use the same process to save her son, Proteus. So this is a revelation that in some sense she was experimenting on Magneto for reasons more personal than otherwise. And Magneto gets incredibly angry about that, talks about how the same kind of rationale was used for experimentation on humans by Dr. Joseph Mengele in Auschwitz, that Magneto heard the same rationale from the infamous Mengele while he was an inmate at Auschwitz. So Magneto tortures Moira MacTaggert and demands that she reiterate the process of interfering with the genetic matrix of the captured X-Men so that they become loyal followers of his cause. There's a little interlude there in respect of something that is coming up in issue number 4. And here then the Blue Team visit Professor X, who's a prisoner aboard Asteroid M, and they tell him that they haven't come to rescue him, but rather to tell him that they're taking Magneto's side. So this is subsequent to Moira reproducing the intervention into the genetic code with the X-Men Blue Team. And meanwhile, back on Earth and at the X-Mansion in the Danger Room, Jean Grey and Storm, the leaders of the Gold Team, are running different scenarios in order to try and figure out how they might be able to successfully beat Magneto, the Acolytes, and rescue the Blue Team and Professor X and Moira MacTaggert from Asteroid M. At that point, they get information from Nick Fury, the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., that the Magneto protocols have been instituted and that their nature is that both of the major superpowers, the USA and the USSR, are launching their most advanced weapons against Asteroid M, basically that a state of war exists between the USA, USSR and Magneto and Asteroid M. So now the X-Men Gold Team have a limited amount of time to get aboard Asteroid M and rescue the Blue Team and Professor X and Moira MacTaggert. And as Storm says at the end of the issue, they've got to at least try to do so. So that is the second issue of X-Men, the 1991 volume. And in subsequent videos, I'm going to take a look at issue 3 and issue 4. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.